must be the season of the witch. Welcome back, S'mores, to Beyond the Campfire. We've got another great episode going on for you guys today. We're talking about not our favorite witch over here, Mr. Steve. We're talking about a very famous trial today and actually the conspiracy behind it. And what better podcast to talk about this on? What better time to talk about this than now? That's right. What are we diving into what are we diving in today, Steve?
That is going in the compilation.
That's going in there.
Welcome back, more. Yeah, so we are talking about the Salem Witch Trials. So we will get into the history. We'll talk about how the trials were conducted. We'll talk about how exactly it happened, and then we'll talk about whether it could happen again. And at the end of the episode, got another ChatGPT story for you about me and Will possibly having our own experience over there.
Are we hunting witches?
Will has actually been kind of in that area, right?
Not kinda. I have been there.
Or you have been there. Okay.
Yep, I've been. So for those of you who don't know, last year my wife and I, for our 1 year anniversary, we were supposed to go to Boston for our honeymoon, but we weren't able to do it. So it was about a year later. For a 1 year we went. But yeah, we went to Boston and we spent a day in Salem. And yeah, I've been to Proctor's Ledge. I think Steve will tell us a little bit about Proctor's Ledge. I've been there. I've actually been to the memorial they have for all the victims of the witch trial. We went to a couple of these shoddy little museums that they had, where they talked about what happened. We actually were able to. It was spur of the moment because I had planned that trip for about a year. And there was one thing we did on the trip that was actually spontaneous that we didn't even plan to do. And that was we were walking around. There's the main street, right? And they have the old town hall. And so there's a woman outside standing there and she was dressed in the costume. She was talking like it was back then. And she's like, "We got a trial going on. Come on, y'all." And so, I walked over there. We bought the tickets right at the spur of the moment. We were actually able to sit in what would have been like the trial. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, I'll be giving some of my insight knowledge as Stephen goes through and telling you guys what I learned while in Salem. And
Yeah, no, sounds great. It was it definitely sounds like a great experience. I definitely want to try to go there at some point. So we will we'll see if maybe even me and Will could go. So support our Patreon. Go go help us there, and then me and Will can possibly do trips like that.
Oh yeah. I think there's a lot of great spooky haunted locations that we learned about because we did a ghost tour that we definitely are probably gonna have to visit if you guys go listen to our Patreon.
Absolutely. So Salem Village no longer kind of exists as that town, right? It's now...
it's definitely become more touristy. I will say that. I'll actually at once Stephen talks about that. Towards the end, I'll tell you guys a little bit about the reason why Salem is now the way Salem is, because it's actually because of a TV show. And I'll tell you guys about that towards the end, that we learned about the whole reason Salem became the way it was. But yeah, as we know it, the village today, not there. There is a recreation. Manny and I weren't able to go to it because it's only open on Fridays and Saturdays, I believe. Or it might just be open on Saturdays. And we went on a Thursday. So weren't able to go to the recreation of the village, but the village, no, it's not there.
I see. So, okay, cool. I think is it Danvers, Massachusetts? Is that what the city's called now?
It's still Salem.
Oh, it is still called Salem. Okay,
yep.
Gotcha. Okay, very cool. So we have that continuity over there. Okay, well, Salem, before it became the big bustling tourist attraction that it is now, was a small village where you had a lot of Puritans and Puritan type people. I don't think I've talked about what kind of denomination of Christianity I am that much, but broadly speaking, I am Protestant. Specifically, I am Reformed, and Reformed Baptists actually have a lot of continuity with the Puritans. So normally we've been making fun of the Catholics. Today we're gonna make fun of my own tribe of people a little bit today.
Yeah, he's Reformed. I'm just Southern Baptist.
There you go. Yeah, there's Southern Baptist.
We didn't burn any witches.
Yeah, so Southern Baptists have a little bit of a cleaner record than
Oh well, somewhat clean, but
somewhat clean. Yeah,
that's not for this episode.
That's not
That's for Stephen's theology podcast.
But yeah, the Puritans, at that time, Puritans very much were about reading only the Bible. They would typically say, don't read any other books. And they centered their whole life around biblical living, which was good. I do think they were a little bit legalistic. I do think it's okay to read other books and things like that. But generally speaking, they were trying to do God's will, and they were trying to create a city. So good so far. Fair enough. Things are good.
You want to know something very interesting about the Puritans?
Mm-hmm.
So when we went to Boston, we also visited Plymouth, which, if you don't know, Plymouth is where the Pilgrims landed. And it's really cool there, and I really enjoyed it. I wish we could have spent more time there. There wasn't a lot to do, but they have a recreation of the Pilgrim Village, and inside that village, they have like people that work, and the people don't speak like we do; they speak like they did back then. But there's a funny video of me trying to read a Pilgrim Bible, and it did not go very well. I'll have to send that clip to Haley. She probably can throw it in there. But yeah, Puritans literally were putting the word pure in Puritan.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so 1692 is where we're at. The U.S. is not quite formalized yet. It's still the belonging to the British colonies. And in 1692, a small group of young girls really start this witch hunting craze. So you have Betty Paris, who's age 9, and her cousin Abigail Williams, who is age 11. If some of those names sound somewhat familiar, it's because they are. There's been many stories written about these people. One of the stories, these were young girls, right? So there wasn't anything romantic going on, but some of the stories have Abigail Williams being a lot older, like being in her teenage years or her early 20s, and having an affair with a guy named John, which John was a real person from the Salem Witch Trials, but
yep, good old John Proctor.
Yeah, John Proctor. And he wasn't a guy having an affair with like a girl in her 20s, like the Crucible betrays. He was actually 60 years old during this time in 1692. So real life John was 60, and real life Abigail Williams was 11, and there's nothing going on between the two of them. If you read the Crucible again, you have a much younger John Proctor, who's I guess in his 30s. And
it's kind of weird how how the Crucible does things. It's weird how we do that with history. We take like two people that definitely were not in love, and we change up the ages, and we go, yeah, they were in love.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess it made for a more dramatic story, which is why I think it was Arthur Miller who wrote The Crucible. Yep, it was Arthur Miller who wrote it. But anyway, we're not here to talk about The Crucible. You can talk about that in your 11th grade or 10th grade literature class. But Abigail and Betty Paris started to begin behaving in ways that the local residents, and again, remember, these guys are Puritans, right, found very strange and extraordinary. They started to have screaming fits. Their bodies would contort in weird ways. They would bark like dogs, and they were claiming to be pinched and pricked by invisible agents. So,
yep,
very, very strange behavior. Some might say, hey, these are just kids being kids. Others might say, no, there's some demonic things at work. Me and we'll talk about our theories a little bit later in the episode. But nonetheless, these are engaging in some strange behavior. At that time, Salem was already just struggling with a lot of tension. There was property disputes going on. There's religious disputes. There was this new minister named Reverend Samuel Paris, who generally just was very wary of frontier life. Again, the Puritans had come to this land, and they're trying to build a life. So, Salem wasn't this like well-established, thriving village. It was hard. you had to like really
Yep.
get the town going, and Samuel Paris was kind of struggling with the realities of that. So the girls start to get a lot of attention, and they decide that they are going to start blaming specific neighbors of witchcraft and saying, hey, the reason we are doing these weird things, the reason our body is contorting in weird ways, is because people are performing witchcraft on us. And we're going to point out these people, and they're going to get in trouble. So, any questions so far?
Nope.
Okay, cool. So then, some of the people that they start off blaming, young Abigail and young Betty, is a woman named Taituba, I think is how you
Yep.
say it.
It's some Caribbean name.
Yeah, Taituba. She was an enslaved woman of West Indian origin. So I don't know how many of you guys know this. So I'm from Northwest India. I don't know if Taituba would have. I don't think she was Punjabi, so she might not have been
No.
my specific type of woman. But she was kind of somewhat near the region where my family's from. So you had Taituba, an enslaved woman of West Indian origin, some Caribbean in there too, probably.
Yep. She was from the Caribbean, I believe. Yeah.
Gotcha. You had Sarah Good, who was a beggar in the town, and they also blamed Sarah Osborne, an older women.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they blamed them, and they're saying these women are witches. They are performing their witchery on us, and this is why we're doing weird things. So, in a town where there's already fear of the devil, there's a lot of beliefs in invisible forces, and just kind of already the political instability of New England in general, people started to take these very seriously. A
Yeah.
little more seriously than maybe they should have. And again, we can dispute how much real witchcraft was in place, or if there was no witchcraft at all.
Yeah.
But uh, eventually, the villagers started to take this very, very seriously. The accusations started to spread. The colony's governor, William Phipps, established a special tribunal in June of 1692 to kind of like look at these cases and see if there was any merit to it. And here is where the controversial stuff comes in. So, I'm working as a lawyer / legal researcher. What evidence you bring in, what evidence is allowed to bring into court, really can determine whether you win a case or not. The court decided to bring in a very controversial form of evidence called spectral evidence.
Yep. Good all spectral evidence.
What is spectral evidence? Well, that is testimony that the spirit or specter of the accused appeared and afflicted the victim, even if the accused person's body was elsewhere. Will, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add about
No,
spectral.
that's what they taught. That's what they told us in the museums about kind of how it all happened was because there's a spectral witness where Abigail and what's her name were sitting there and they were like, I could see them. I see them. They're in the room. And yeah, it was pretty crazy. I would have actually, I would like to have traveled back in time and kind of sat in that courtroom. Because it's like, if you had that today, like that's the crazy thing to think about is like with spectral evidence, like if you were sitting in a courtroom and you accuse somebody of something, and all of a sudden you're sitting in the courtroom and you're like, they're putting their spirit on me. You're either gonna be like, go get the jacket and the paddy wagon. You're off the hook. That lady's going down to the down to the mental institution. Because just the idea of spectral evidence, like I don't even think it should be like when you're like, oh, it's a controversial topic. I don't even think it should be even considered evidence.
For sure, right? Yeah.
Because like you're telling me that you think this guy's doing witchcraft, and the only evidence you have is that only you can see his specter flying around the room, and we can't see that. Oh, but you know what? We're still gonna hang him. Ridiculous.
For sure. So they use this evidence, and things started to escalate very, very, very quickly.
Oh yeah, they escalated all right.
Yeah, trials were swift, and it very quickly started to result in full-on executions. People died because they were accused of being witches.
Yeah, and one guy got it the worst.
For sure, for sure. We'll get to that in just a second. But the first execution was that of Bridget Bishop on June 10th, 1692, which was then followed by other hangings in July, August, and September. Um, Over 200 people were accused, roughly, right? Some estimates
Yeah.
kind of have somewhere between 150. Some have it as high as 200, but about 30 people were actually convicted
Yep.
of being witches. 19 of them were hanged, and one man, Giles Corey, was he the guy you're referring to?
Yep. Good old Giles Corey.
Giles Corey was killed by a process called pressing.
Do you know what happens with pressing?
Pressing is is that when they put the stones on your chest?
So what they did was, and are you going to get into like part of what would happen to you if you were accused of witchcraft and you were actually found guilty? Were you going to get into what happens to you, like besides being executed?
Let me look at my notes. I think so.
Because that's kind of the reason why Giles Corey went out the way he did.
I got you. Looking at my notes, I actually don't know if I have that in there. Did you a little bit?
If I remember correctly, if you're accused of being a witch and you're found guilty, basically your family would lose everything.
Mm.
And it was kind of like you lose the power you had, you lose the money you had, you lose the house you had, all of this because you're found guilty of being a witch. So Giles Corey, I think he's the only one who was technically not convicted. Or well, he was convicted, but I think he's the only one that did not admit to being a witch.
Okay.
And that's why they pressed him to death, was because they would start stacking the stones on it. So what they did was they would lay him on the ground, and they'd almost take like a piece of plywood. Obviously, it wasn't a piece of plywood, but they would take something like a piece of plywood. They would lay it on his chest, and then they'd start adding more and more stones, and then they would stop. You got all this pressure on your chest from the stones, and what you do is then you'd be like, okay, are you a witch? And if they're like, no, then you start stacking more and more stones until you get a confession. It's almost like waterboarding, but with rocks. So Giles Corey, because of the whole thing of like, if you're accused of witch, it could really screw over your family. He never admitted to it. And they would keep stacking stones. And so the legend goes that they asked him, are you a witch? And all he would reply is, more stones.
Mm.
And he never admitted to it. And so there's actually really cool, I don't know if you have this in your notes, because this also ties into the Beyond the Campfire, like we're a conspiracy, where we talk about the conspiracies behind it. We can also talk about some of the legends and some of the rumors. Did you know that there was actually a curse put on the sheriff?
I did not know that. No.
So we learned this from our ghost tour, and I don't know how much of this is true, but it's really interesting, this fact. So because Giles Corey, the way he died was his chest was crushed in from the stones. Legend has it that before he died, he put a curse on the sheriff. And here's the strange thing. Every single sheriff either died or retired due to heart issues.
Interesting. Okay.
Except for the most recent sheriff, he didn't have any of these problems because he moved the sheriff's office from Salem to the next city over. And because of that, he never had any heart problems. So every single one of them had some sort of heart complication. Every single sheriff since the guy who killed Giles Corey has had some sort of heart issue. And it's like there's the legend of a curse.
And I was gonna say, with Giles Corey, I think probably in all likelihood, pretty much all of the people that were killed were innocent. And it's just like, with him in particular, he was someone that stood his ground and said, no, I'm not going to admit to something that I never did. Right.
And it's like in the amount of like courage that takes, because it's not like, oh, we've got you on a hangman's noose. Okay, my neck's going to snap, quick, easy death. Like, no, this guy was crushed to death. And legend has it that when they kept asking him, "Are you a witch?" instead of being like, "No, I'm innocent," he just kept saying, "More stones. Come on, stack it on." You know?
Yeah, and definitely, I think Giles Corey is a good example of people are saying you did something wrong, but you didn't do anything wrong. And I think there is something noble about standing your ground and saying, no, I'm not going to admit to sin when I have not sinned.
Exactly. I'm not going to give in just because you're saying something. Like, I mean, that shows to me that if I don't know how, I don't know about the other people, but Giles Corey to me was definitely innocent.
For sure.
And of course we'll give our opinions on everybody else, but Giles Corey to me, he was definitely innocent. I don't think he was guilty at all, and it's sad that he had to go out the way he did.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm glad I'm glad you filled in that part of like kind of the mystical element of it, because I think my story was kind of leaning more on the historical side of things. I think I had like a couple of theories of what was really going on, but that's really interesting of that Giles Corey thing. Eventually, people kind of sobered up by late 1692. The public was kind of starting to shift their opinion.
Yeah.
Many prominent local figures are starting to be accused, and by early 1693, the courts disallowed spectral evidence. They started to kind of move towards more traditional different things. And yeah, really by October of 1692, Governor Phipps pardoned many of the accused. He's like, okay, this is getting crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And in the following years, the Massachusetts legislature formally acknowledged, yeah, we messed up. This was wrong. In 1711, they passed a bill that reversed 22 of the people's convictions and providing compensation for the families. But yeah, overall, I mean, there are reports of like, hey, was there actually some witchcraft going on? It wasn't. I think there was a lot of mass hysteria. I think there
I
was,
think that's what really got to people. I think,
but there
yeah,
probably was at least one or two people that maybe weren't doing full on witchcraft, but were doing something weird. I don't know
a
if you
little
had
shady.
about that.
No, well, I was going to ask, did you? Because I think part of it was like if I remember correctly, because like I said, this was a year ago, so I'm trying to remember everything I learned in the museum. But it's like Tibet was kind of what kind of made everything start, because since Tibet was from the Caribbean, she was a little bit not dabbling in witchcraft, but like the herbal side of things. And so that could have stemmed off some of the things. There was the belief that the devil was in the woods, and that, the girls were claiming to have seen, these people in the woods making pacts with the devil and dancing crazy and all this. And I really think it was just, I think when you're in a village like this and you're a little girl, I think you're going to let your imagination run a little wild, because other than like causing a whole entire witch hunt, what else is it like 11-year-old girl going to do in a small little Salem village?
Right, exactly.
Play hoop and stick, play with her little straw doll. No, she's going to create mass hysteria. And I think that's where like the whole thing of this is. I think the problem with the Salem witch trials is the fact that I think it was a combination of things. And I think it was like the government was, crazy. There's mass hysteria. We were allowing this whole spectral evidence thing. Could there have been some people that might have been dabbling in a little bit of like voodoo or hoodoo or, some sort of witchcraft? Maybe there was somebody doing something a little shady and it just kind of spiraled. So I really think the problem with the Salem witch trials is now, like I said, so there's spooky aspects of it. Like I talked about, the curse and, Giles Corey and what he had done. And, I think the Salem witch trials is a very interesting timepiece. I think we learn a lot from it. And I'll let Stephen give his theory. And then I'm actually going to tell you guys what we had learned about the reason why it's so why it's now talked about today. But yeah, that's my opinion is I just think it was mass hysteria. I think the government failed its part. And I think because of the whole, how that like now we have separation of church and state, and I think because the church was mostly the ones running everything, if they have a chance to get rid of some sinful people and some people of the devil, they're going to do what they can to get rid of those people, even if it's not true. And I think that's part of the problem I think it was just a culmination where it started out with two little girls want to play a little joke, play a little prank or whatever, and it grew into mass hysteria. And then, the government got involved. And when the government got involved, things got a little wild and crazy and hectic, and things just spiraled, and it led to 19 people being killed.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's kind of just crazy how everything happened. My theory is I think it was basically mass hysteria. I think there's corrupt politicians in place. Like, why on earth are you allowing spectral evidence?
Well, not only are you allowing spectral evidence, why are you allowing an 11-year-old girl to tell you that I saw that person doing witchcraft? You know what I was doing when I was 11 years old?
What were you doing?
I was playing out in the yard, pretending a stick was a sword. I didn't make the stick a sword. you know?
No, for sure. And what I can't prove it, but if I had to guess, I think there were some political vendettas in place.
Could have
And
been.
that some of the judges or, political leaders were using this as an opportunity to get rid of people that they didn't particularly like. And yeah, so
it does fit into our spooky theme because we got witches, we've got spectral evidence, we've got corrupt politicians. So yeah, I was going to tell you real quick so we went to Proctor's Ledge. Proctor's Ledge, if you don't know, that's where they hanged them. They had like a memorial plaque with everybody who was hanged at Proctor's Ledge. It's actually behind a CVS now. It's kind of funny. There's a CVS. But it's a little park. I wouldn't say like a little park. It's kind of like you got the road, and then there's like a hillside, and carved in the side of the hill is this like stone monument with all these the name placards. But what's really crazy is because I know you were talking about where it was like, Massachusetts was passing these laws, and so really after the Salem Witch Trials, for those of you who don't know, something happened in the 1960s that allowed Salem become the touristy spot it is, that kind of made it into what it is now today. And I was going to tell you guys about that because I thought it was really interesting because we had all this corruption. We talk about these corrupt politicians, mass hysteria, all these people dying, and Salem wanted to move on. They were sick of the image it gave them. They felt disgusted by what they had done, and they wanted to move on. And so the reason why Salem became what it is today is because in 1960, there was a famous witch who had a TV show. Do you know who that is?
who?
You ever heard the show Bewitched?
Oh, I have, yeah.
Yeah. So, crap, can't think of her name. They have a statue of her at Salem. But like I think either a fire happened or a flood happened, and so they couldn't film some of her episodes. They said, "Well, what if we went to Salem where the witch trials happened, and we filmed there?" Well, Salem was like, "Hey, we don't want to remember this. This was terrible." And they're like, "Well, we got a great idea. We got a great idea that'll work. It'll be fine." So you know what their great idea was?
What was their great idea?
So the lady in the show, I keep forgetting her name. She traveled back in time to stop the witch trials. And so that was the whole episode. So that was in like the late 60s, I think. So then in 1972 was when the first witch shop opened in Salem.
Look at that.
And then after that, it just sprawled. And so in the 1980s was when everything kind of really took off. And because of the show Bewitched, we now have Salem today.
Neat. Okay, I'll have to look into that. I'm basically done. I just got a ChatGPT story. Anything else you want to add or say before
sorry, I was trying to see if I had I was trying to see if I could remember what the lady's name was. From Bewitched, but no, I don't think I'm trying to think if I got anything else. So there's that. Yeah, it was. I was wondering if we were going to go more into Kate and then more into the trials deeper, but if not, that's okay. I think we got all the information out.
Nope. There I am.
Oh, there you
Yeah,
are.
yeah. The trials, I mean, is basically, corruption of the spectral evidence, and we kind of talked about what happened to Giles Corey. Giles Corey in particular, I'm just like, yes, somebody wanted that guy dead, and
yeah. Well, I think it. With Giles Corey, it could have been, corruption. It could have been mass hysteria. Like he is a witch, and we got to get the confession out of him. even if it kills them. Because like the whole idea was like we even look at some of the because for those of you who don't know, like the witch trials in America were not as bad as the witch trials in England and Ireland, because over there they were burning people.
Yeah.
But like because I don't know why Giles Corey had to go out the way he did, and I don't know if it was because that was their way of getting a confession out of him, and whether that was like, oh, we're corrupt, we got something against this guy, or the could the politicians have even started believing, we're Puritans, right? We want everything pure, and there's these girls accusing these people of being witches, and we got this spectral evidence, and we know that the devil's real, and we know that demons are real. So like, could it have that they fell into mass hysteria as well and just saw this as like, well, you know what? I never liked that guy, and I know why I didn't like that guy now. It's because he was a witch the whole time. So, that could have been part of the reason why they did Giles, because, we know like in England and stuff, they would, drown people because witches float,
Yeah. Supposedly.
Supposedly. So I think with Giles and all of them, I think it was just that like we said earlier, that mass hysteria, and it's tragic it had to end the way it did,
Yeah, no, for sure. Let me go ahead and read the ChatGPT story, and we'll wrap up today. So, all right, you ready?
All right, Captain.
All right. The rain in modern-day Boston had a way of making everything look older, as if the centuries had never really left. Will's hat dripped as he pushed open the heavy wooden door of a narrow townhouse on Beacon Hill. Stephen followed, brushing water from his coat, his expression thoughtful but wary. A woman in her late 60s greeted them. Her gray hair was tied back, her glasses perched low on her nose. The brass plaque on the wall read, Dr. Lydia Crane, Department of Folklore and Occult Studies, Harvard University. Gentlemen, she said, voice sharp but pleasant, you wish to speak about the Salem Witch Trials? Will nodded, removing his hat. We've heard you're the best expert in New England on witchcraft, past or present. Dr. Crane smiled faintly. Ah, present. You mean modern witches, I see. Stephen interjected, polite but firm. We've studied cases from around the world, real supernatural events, not just folklore. But the Salem stories, there's something different about them. Something darker. Darker? She repeated, eyes glinting. Or perhaps closer to the truth. Will leaned forward on the mahogany desk. So what you're saying is, witches still exist. Dr. Crane tilted her head. What do you think, cowboy? I think, Will said slowly, if evil existed then, it didn't just vanish because people stopped believing in it. Stephen frowned. We didn't come here to provoke you, ma'am. We're just trying to understand whether anyone today might still practice what the accused of 1692 were condemned for. Dr. Crane's smile tightened. Careful there. Asking too much of the unseen world? It tends to answer back. Will chuckled. I've been answered before, usually not politely. Oh, can you hear that?
Hear what?
Okay, never mind. It might have just been me. Okay.
Are you getting a little jumpy?
No, yeah, I'm having to move something for my dad. He was texting me. Okay, here we go. Sorry. The air shifted. The lights flickered. Dr. Crane rose from her chair, voice growling low and resonant. You came seeking witches, cowboys, and preachers of the modern age? So tell me, when you find one, what will you do with her? Stephen stiffened. Ma'am, what are you saying? Her eyes burned suddenly gold. You should not have come here. The wind howled.
Oh boy.
Books flew open, pages spinning. Will reached for his gun. Too late. A violent flash erupted, and the world vanished in white. Salem, 1692.
Ah, no.
Stephen and Will landed in mud and snow beneath a gray sky. Bells tolled from a distant meeting house. Will, tell me you didn't just see what I saw, Stephen murmured. I saw it, partner, and my spine doesn't like it one bit. They looked up. Puritan villagers surrounded them, pitchforks raised. Who are ye? Shouted one man. Devil's men? Sorcerers? Whoa there, Will raised his hands. We ain't, but rough hands seized them. Stephen tried to draw his sword, but it was gone. Will checked his holster. Empty. The witch took our weapons, Stephen muttered grimly. Within minutes, they were dragged through the village square, bound and thrown against wooden stakes. Women cried out, men muttered prayers. A stern-faced preacher approached. You appear in the midst of holy ground dressed as no godly men would. What devilry brought you here? Stephen's voice was calm, though his eyes betrayed his fear. Sir, we are not of the devil. We serve the Lord Jesus Christ. We mean no harm. The preacher raised his Bible high. The devil preaches, quotes scripture too. The villagers began to chant. Firewood piled at their feet. A torch flared. Will glanced at Stephen. Got any ideas? Stephen bowed his head. One. He prayed aloud, voice trembling but firm. Lord Jesus, you delivered Daniel from lions and Paul from prison. If it pleases you, send help now. Show these people you reign. For a moment, silence. Then, the sky split open with a roar like thunder. A radiant figure descended in blinding light. Michael, the archangel, wings stretched across the heavens.
Our good old buddy.
The villagers fell to their knees in terror. The preacher dropped his Bible. Michael's voice boomed like a storm. These men are servants of the Most High. Touch them not. The ropes burned away with holy fire. Will and Stephen fell to the ground, free. Rise, Michael said. There is work yet to do. The preacher, trembling, pointed east. The witch who cursed our town. She dwells beyond the ridge. A young villager stepped forward, offering them weapons. 2 muskets and a pair of gleaming swords. Take these, good sir. End her wickedness. Stephen nodded solemnly. By the grace of God, we will. The night wind screamed over the ridge. A full moon hung over Salem, where the witch waited. Dr. Crane's face twisted with dark energy. Her voice carried like a curse. You think you can undo my centuries of work? Fools, I am the storm that never died. She raised her hands, bolts of lightning violently ripping across the clearing.
What?
Will dove aside, mud exploding where he stood. Stephen, she's meaner than a rattlesnake on Sunday school. Stephen deflected a blast with one sword, the steel glowing gold. Stay focused. Light overcomes darkness. The witch hurled another volley. Energy spiraled, ripping trees from the ground. Will fired, his musket blazing. The shot struck her shoulder. She screamed, energy crackling from the wound. Stephen charged, swords igniting with holy fire as he shouted, The Lord is my deliverer. He slashed her talisman. The necklace shattered, releasing a burst of black smoke. The witch shrieked, stumbling backward. You cannot banish me! Evil will always return. Will cocked his gun. Then we'll be here to send you packing again. He fired the final shot. The witch burst into light, disintegrating into sparks scattered into the wind. The storm ceased, silence fell. A faint echo echoed through the clearing. Time to go home, men of faith. Stephen and Will blinked, finding themselves once again in Dr. Crane's study. Will sat down, rubbing his temples. You ever get tired of this time traveling business? Will chuckled softly. Evil doesn't care what year it is. They walked out into the cool Boston air, 2 men from another time, carrying faith like fire to a dark and modern world. Yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you what, it's giving me supernatural vibes because it's like it's me and you, Sam and Dean, and then we've got our Castiel or Archangel Michael. Even though in Supernatural, I think he was pretty much a dick, but
yeah. But it's dude. If we could make one day Patreon supporters, this is on you. If we could make a supernatural types thing with us, that would be great.
Well, we have plans to eventually. Yeah, I don't know if we shared this, but we do have eventually plans where we hope in the future where we plan to actually make a comic book. Now they won't be exactly like the ChatGPT stories because we'll actually have actual writers and actual writers and artists working on it. So that's why it's not going to happen for a while because we've got y'all got to get us the funds, but we can hopefully you can find comic books of us maybe in 5 years in the store. And they won't be exactly like the ChatGPT stories. They'll be a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, is that all you got for me? Is this that?
That's all I got. My dad needs me to drive over to my grandma's house, and he said be quick, which is
All right. Well, we ain't got anything else. So, Steven, huh? No, I think that's it. Thank you guys again for watching. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram at Beyond Campfire. Watch where you get podcasts. You can find our Patreon at Beyond Campfire, at Beyond the Campfire, and we should be having. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, this is something I want to go and tell you guys. Our merch has been offline for a little bit, but we are working to get that back on because we had to do a couple things. But merch will be coming back. I'm planning to get a whole bunch of new designs done. So maybe by the end of the year, or maybe around Christmas, there might be a huge merch launch with a whole bunch of new designs and stuff. Hoping to get that going. So, anything else before we leave, Steve?
That's it for me.
All right, and thank you guys again for watching. And be careful who puts a spell on you.